Welcome. This is Wisdom Hunter with solo D&D gaming for RPG on Roll20. So we're going to continue on with the story right now with the Moonshae treasure hunt. And in the last episode, our three adventurers got to know each other in the town of Kaladir. And so as they got to know each other, they began to put together some of their missions and their adventures. And they're beginning to work together so that wizard Sarcostica, she sees dreams. And she writes down things, and she's very intelligent, and she tries to figure things out. And then there's Sevnin, who is the Horizon Walker Ranger, who sees signs from the Earth Mother, and signs that lead them to certain places. So together, through their wisdom of the Ranger and the intelligence of the Scholar Wizard type, they're able to find their way through the land to where they need to go and do things. So they got on a boat. They figured out that they needed to go to High Rock, up the coast in Alaran Island. Along the way, a pirate ship came out and tried to attack them, but they were able to actually outrun the pirate ship and got away, which I was surprised. I actually wanted to see a battle take place, but hey, there's going to be plenty of time for battles. So, in this adventure, they're actually heading on towards High Rock now, in the boat. So let's bring up a picture to show that. So here we see them going along the coast up to High Rock. Now, in the regular adventure of the Moonshae treasure hunt that's made for the Adventurers League, they show up at High Rock, they start walking along the beach, they see who they're looking for, there's a combat, and it all happens very quickly, because that's the Adventurers League. And they don't even go into the town of High Rock, they don't know anything. So what I did is I actually just changed it around and said, okay, I know who they're looking for. But I'm going to just let the Oracle figure out exactly what happened. So I actually went through the adventure, and I'm going to give you kind of a summary of what happened. So as they're heading towards High Rock, I'm doing a roll on the Oracle to find out what's going on in High Rock. And there's something in there about disappearance. So what I'm going to say is that the lady that they're looking for, she has actually been kidnapped. And so they're going to have to go in there and find out someone who's going to tell them this information. So all this is taking place as they're traveling on the boat to High Rock. I'm kind of setting out the story. So they're going to have to go into the dock, walk around, talk with some people, ask some questions. If they don't find the answer there, they're going to have to walk farther up into town and get to one of the taverns. But actually in High Rock, because of the culture there, there's only one tavern. And that's where all the people go. So there's only one tavern for people to get together and eat and drink, socialize. That's just sort of the culture of the place. And as they're there, they're asking for people to talk to, and they begin to tell the stories of what they're doing. And then someone tells them, oh, that this one lady was kidnapped, which is kind of strange because no one knows where she went, but her mule and her things are still there. So all of a sudden, she herself just disappeared, but the things she would have taken with her were somehow left behind. And so the Oracle helped figure out that story. And so at that point in time, they have to figure out, so if she was kidnapped, where did they take her? Okay, let me take you to the picture now of what High Rock looks like. Okay, so now here we are in Roll20. Now just to get a feel of what High Rock looks like, I did a search on the internet for different types of pictures. And this is the one I came up with that gave me a feel for what High Rock would look like. You can see the ocean off in the distance, the coastline, and you can see some buildings, and then you can see this old castle, which could be considered the High Rock. And so I developed a town around and inside this picture. This was the visual I had when I went in and actually had the characters walking around trying to find this lady. And as it turns out, she is the daughter of the leader of a clan, the Rustfire clan, and she's on a mission. And so all of a sudden she disappeared, but they were asking because in the poem, in the writing that Sarcostica received in her dream, it said in there that this daughter of the mountains was a wielder of the flame. And so as it turns out, this one daughter who's missing actually has a weapon of fire, a hammer that when she wields it, it goes aflame with fire. So then they began to realize this is the lady. But Sarcostica realized this is who they're looking for, but they didn't know where she was. And that's when Sevnin came in and began to walk around the town looking for a sign from the Earth Mother to lead him to where she might be. And so as he was walking along, all of a sudden he rolled a perception of 22. And he was able to see in that moment a little construction site, and some rocks fell down. What was really strange to him is he didn't hear anything. It was totally silent. All these rocks fell down into a pile, but he couldn't recall hearing any sound from it. And so he thought, that's kind of strange. That must be a sign that I'm looking for. And so he began to think, okay, rubble, silence, things falling down, falling apart. So he began to think maybe there's some ruins around here that are very silent and old. So they went back to the tavern and asked the people in the tavern, is there some old ruins around here that are crumbling down and it's just completely silent, that there's nobody there? And they gave them a lead to where ruins like that were back off in the hills somewhere. So you can see how I'm developing a whole story of looking through the land and where they need to go. Instead of just walking down the beach, seeing a lady being attacked by some people, doing a combat, saving her, and then going on with the story, they're going through this whole story where they're letting their own talents come out of being able to perceive things, hear things, find things, understand things, and piecing it together with the people in the town. And now they realize they're going to have to walk over the mountain to an old ancient ruin site and see what's there. So let me take you to that site. So here we see it. They came to this old ruin site. You can see the group over here up to the left. They were hiding behind some trees. And when I ran the audible distance, let me show you what the audible distance macro looks like. When it came out, they were beyond the distance. When they were being stealthy, they were beyond the distance of even being heard. So just being stealthy at that distance, they didn't even have to roll a stealth roll because they were beyond that audible distance of, say, 45, 30 feet or whatever it was. They were far enough away that doing stealth, that the characters, the NPCs, didn't even have to roll a perception check to try and hear them. They were being stealthy far enough away, they couldn't be heard. And so they were trying to figure out from what they could see in here what was going on. So they did a perception check. They could hear some people inside. They couldn't really hear what they were saying, but they could see and hear certain things. And they tried to hear the lady here, right there in the center, who's tied up on a rock. They couldn't hear her, so they didn't really know. But they felt something was strange because they could see a guard walk by one of these open spaces. So they could see some sort of guard with weapons in there. So they became suspicious. And then Sevnen had to do a stealth roll and get up here closer to look inside. And then Sevnen had to do a stealth roll because he was within that audible distance that he could possibly be heard. But his stealth roll was high. They couldn't see him. So he was able to look inside and actually see that there was this big axe beak and some guards walking around. He couldn't see everybody. He couldn't see their leader, who was sitting down over here, hiding behind some rock walls. He couldn't see them, so he really didn't know how many were there, but he could see that there were guards there and a little bit of someone tied up in the middle. And so he went back, let everybody else know what he saw, so they knew that there was something going on. They needed to go in and attack and try and think, okay, this must be the place. She must be in there somewhere. So they developed a plan to come in and attack. And they all rolled for initiative. And what Sevnen did first, Sevnen was first in the battle, he went ahead and shot the axe beak a couple of times. And the axe beak moved away. And then Sarcostica came in. And she put up a hypnotic image up here, a minor illusion, up here on top of this rock, showing another bird that was supposedly scaring away the axe beak, and that's why the axe beak moved away from the shots of Sevnen. So when the guards saw the axe beak reacting to something, they looked up and saw a minor illusion of an animal there and thought that was the problem that was causing the axe beak to move away. So then on their turn, the guards began to attack this other animal up here. And they missed, so they didn't really see that the arrows went through the thing. Their shots weren't good enough to even hit this minor illusion. So they were able to waste one of their turns. And also, I'll go back, is that Sevenin had a surprise attack. So Sevenin was able to use a feat for surprise attack and get an extra bonus in damage on that first turn, on that first round. And then they just went into battle. And eventually, Falky came in here, and the leader came around, and some of the others came around. The Axebeak died, and one of the other guards came out here and was trying to fire at them. And so they were moving in and using, regular combat. And eventually, the heroes killed everybody and went and saved the princess, saved the daughter of the leader of the clan. And so they began to talk, and then she said that she had to go find a pearl. And why did she need the pearl? Because she's putting together this spell. She's putting together a divination spell to figure out what she needs to do for this battle coming up between her and her enemies. And so she's going to need to go down to the coast on the beach and look for an oyster with a red pearl. And she needs that red pearl to do this special divination spell. So they figured they'd go help her. Now let's cut to the next scene. So here we are at the next scene. Our PCs are on the beach helping the daughter of the clan leader find a red pearl in an oyster. And so they did various checks to try and find this. So I had them do a group check. So I'll show you over here to the right. You'll see this cumulative group DC multiple rounds check. So there's 3 Ps doing this check. And the DC was a 99, which is 3 PCs. And I gave them 3 rounds to find this before the Sagouine out in the water began to attack. And there was a JDC of 12 minus 1, so the result was a 99. So they needed 3 rounds to try and roll different types of skill checks to beat 99. Sevenin rolled a 14 perception, Falky rolled a 17, Sarcostica rolled a 20. So they got off to a really good start, being able to see really well through the water. Must have been low tide, and the oysters were kind of popping out. So it was a good time, easy to perceive things. And then from there, they went into investigation checks, nature checks, more perception checks, investigations, survival checks. Eventually, they beat the 99, and they found the red pearl. Now, in the, for example, in the nature check by Sarcostica, she asked if there was a special characteristic about the oyster that would show them that there was a red pearl inside. And because she had a 13 and actually beat the JDC of 12, she was able to learn that there was like this red glow, this red fringe along the outside of the oyster that would signify there was a red pearl inside. So that sped up their ability to find this red pearl. So they found the red pearl. But around that time, some creatures appeared from out of the water with spears to attack. Now these are the Sagouine. And the thing about them is they're going to attack elves or half-elves before they attack anybody else. So when they came out of the water, let's get in close here. So when they came out of the water, they saw Sarcostica first and just loaded their spears into her. They went fairly high in the initiative order. Sevenin went first, got a good attack. Then the Sagouine went and just unloaded their spears into Sarcostica. And so you'll see here that Sevenin did the short bow, got a hit, did 9 damage on one of them. And then they started to hit Sarcostica. See over here, ranged attacks with 11-7 standard. That's the stat block that I used for these creatures. And they got a 21, so 8 damage. Another one got 14 against Sarcostica's AC of 11 and got 10 damage. And then another one, but then at that point in time, Falky stepped in and used his interception fighting style to actually reduce the damage by 4. And then the next Sagouine attack, 13 against Sarcostica's 11, got another 5. That actually put Sarcostica down to 1 hit point. If it wasn't for Falky stepping in and doing that interception, she would have gone unconscious. But because he stepped in and reduced the damage by 4, it was just enough damage reduction to keep her alive by 1 hit point. So when it became her turn, she just ran off. She put a spell on her, such as expeditious retreat, which she has, and she just gave herself all this speed and got away and put herself at a distance where these creatures couldn't throw spears at her, but she could still do certain spells. And then the attack went on, where these two stepped in and the creatures came out and were attacking. And the two here were keeping these creatures from following Sarcostica. And Falky got down really low on his hit points too. And then the daughter of the clan came in, touched Falky real fast, gave him some healing, and then she went off and gave Sarcostica some healing. And she got up to like 7 or 8 hit points or something like that. But in the end, they were able to defeat these creatures here. But it was a little tough because their hit points were down after their first battle, and they were doing this on the same day. So all in all, they went through attacks and glaive attacks and light crossbow attacks. At one point, Sarcostica got back into the fight and was starting to hit. Sarcostica would come down from a distance and be shooting crossbows into the Saguakin. And eventually, they defeated the creatures and saved the day. And the daughter of the Rustfire clan, she had a red pearl. Everything was a success. So at that point in time, they received a lot of money. At this point in time, they're going to go back to town and get ready for their next adventure because they're starting to get more dreams. So they went back, they're getting back on the boat, and they're going to go back to Caladir. And that's pretty much how this story went. So you can see I took a story that was that was on like 2 pages, very, very brief in everything they were doing in the original adventure for the Adventurers League. And I made it into a full story with ruins and different monsters on the beach. And I created this whole map of a rocky beach where they could actually look for the oyster. And so I made this story into something much greater than it was originally written. And I developed a whole lot of the other things that made it much more interesting. Now, as we move forward into the next episodes, I'm going to be showing you more closely how I do these battles. But I wanted to go through this kind of quickly just to show you how I developed quickly all these different aspects of the story in a fun, creative way. That I made my own maps, I found my own pictures, I created my own monster stat blocks, and I developed the town through the Oracle and some of the other things that they were doing. It made it an interesting story. So now they're going to move on to the next episode. So here we're going to leave it at that. They've gone back to the boat where the captain is, and they're going to get back on that boat and start heading back to Caladir. So I got you up to speed on the story. So from here on out, we're going to be going into the next episodes where the story continues. That Sarcostica is still receiving messages in her dreams, and they're trying to figure out what to do with those messages. Okay, I think that's going to do it. I wanted to make this one quick and easy for you to watch. This is Wisdom Hunter, and remember, who's ever having the most fun wins.